Welcome back to another English lesson. Maybe you don't know, but I am a real American English teacher in the United States. And what I have put together for you right now is almost 3 hours of English lessons. You will see English lessons about Black Friday, about our president pardoning his son, martial law in South Korea, a few English lessons about the country of Syria and rebels taking over there, drones in the night sky, and some bad things that happened to a powerful CEO here in the United States. If that sounds like fun, sit back, relax, maybe take some notes, but here is over 3 hours of English learning. Welcome back to another English lesson. In this English lesson, you are going to learn how to talk about Black Friday in English. And for you, in this English lesson, I have 6 idioms, 15 advanced vocabulary words we use when talking about Black Friday, 7 phrasal verbs, and just 4 general expressions we use when talking about shopping. So if you are studying for the IELTS or TOEFL exam, we will talk about things you might see on those exams. And before we get started, please let me know, have you ever been Black Friday shopping? And if you don't know what Black Friday is, well, you're in the right place. Let's talk about when Black Friday happens. If you're guessing that it happens on a Friday, it's a really good guess. Black Friday is always the day after Thanksgiving, and Thanksgiving is always the 4th Sunday in November. We're also going to go into a little bit of the history of Black Friday. It has changed quite a bit. Even in my lifetime, I am 49 years old. When I was a kid, there wasn't really a Black Friday. Then when I was in my 20s, maybe my late teens, Black Friday started to be a thing. People would line up. That's our first phrasal verb. People would line up overnight waiting for the stores to open. But lately, now that we have online shopping where you don't need to leave your house to go shopping, Black Friday is changing a little bit. Cyber Monday is getting quite big. Cyber, that has something to do with the internet. Cyber Monday is a time when you can get really good deals on things you want to buy over the internet. Let's talk about lining up first. For each of these terms, I will have a picture, I will have the official definition, and I will have a sentence that uses that term. But let's first look at the picture for lining up. You can see lots and lots of people. I did ask AI to create an image for me of people lining up on Black Friday, and this is what they came up with. We already did that one, didn't we? This is the one we want, lining up. Standing in a straight line while waiting for something. On Black Friday, people were lining up outside the store to get the best deals. Retailers is the next term you might hear when talking about Black Friday. Are you writing this down? Are you taking notes? We have about 32 different things to talk about in total, so this might be a lesson you want to watch a couple times. But retailers are stores or businesses that sell things to people. Let's take a look at this picture. These are some very famous American retailers. You have TJ Maxx. My wife, Jamie, loves TJ Maxx. Walmart is written there a couple times. I see the logo for Target, Kroger, Best Buy. Now, years ago, I would go for Thanksgiving dinner at my sister's house, and I would have to pass by a Best Buy store. It has since closed. But about 20 years ago, people were lining up when I was coming home from dinner. So that must have been around 7 or 8 o'clock p.m. Best Buy wouldn't open until like 6 a.m. But now, like I said, a lot of people just stay home and do their shopping online. But let's take a look at a sentence that uses retailers. Many retailers offer big discounts on Black Friday to attract customers. So many Americans wake up early on Black Friday to try to get those discounts. What does that mean in English? A lower price than usual. The store is offering big discounts on TVs, or you might hear televisions. Let's make that picture a little bigger. Yep, it looks like in that picture, that is a lot of televisions right there. And it looks like they are 50% off. Not a bad deal for Black Friday. For this next slide, I would like to read a paragraph to you about Black Friday. There will be a couple difficult terms in that paragraph, and then we will talk about them after. Let's make it nice and big and start reading. Today, Black Friday is one of the busiest shopping days of the year. Stores offer big discounts to attract customers, with some shoppers lining up overnight for the best deals. Online shopping has also become a major part of Black Friday, making it a key event for both retailers and shoppers. Actually, we went over 4 of those difficult terms in that paragraph already. Lining up, retailers, discount. Let's talk about the term Black Friday and where it comes from. We need to talk about in the black to do that. And in the black means when a business is making money or profit. It's the opposite of in the red, which we will talk about in just a minute. After a busy Black Friday, the store was finally in the black for the year. So a lot of retailers will make a lot of money on Black Friday, which is where the name comes from. And the red is the opposite. That is when a business is losing money. Before Black Friday, the company was in the red, but the sales helped them make a profit. I keep saying profit, and I think profit is one of those terms we will talk about later. Shoppers are also looking for bargains on Black Friday, and that is a good deal or a low price. She found a bargain on a new pair of shoes. Let's take a look at that picture for just a second. It does look like that woman is holding a bag, a very small bag. Maybe she has small feet, but it does look like she got a new pair of shoes. Ooh, here is a bonus term. In that picture, I do see a couple mannequins. That's what we call them in English, mannequins. She left the store feeling happy because she got a bargain. AI sometimes goes crazy with these pictures. I mean, I have never seen more people in a line, but let's talk about what doorbusters are. A doorbuster is a special deal to attract customers. Doorbusters will often happen very early in the morning. I think the term comes from that the deals are so good, people will want to bust down the doors to get those deals. The store has doorbusters starting at 4 a.m., which is why everyone is lining up before midnight. Consumer is the next one. What is a consumer? That is a person who buys things. Consumers are looking for the best deals. We also have something called consumer reports in English, and those are websites or magazines that will let you know if a product is a good buy. I also love reading the reviews when I go shopping online, but consumer reports will help you know if you are buying a bad product. Here's an adjective that might describe stores on Black Friday: hectic, very busy, or chaotic. Chaotic is the adjective, chaos is the noun. The mall is always hectic on Black Friday. Let's change hectic into an adverb, which will describe a verb. Her family is coming over in just an hour for dinner. She will be hectically cleaning her house before they arrive. Yeah, the woman in the picture does not look happy. It looks like she has a lot of cleaning supplies out. She will probably be tired before her family even comes over. My wife and I are both teachers in American schools, and sometimes our days can be very busy, or in other words, they can be very hectic. A lot of times I might ask my wife, "How was your day?" She might say, "Oh, it was hectic." We have overwhelmed and overwhelming. Overwhelming means feeling too much to handle. I mean, so many people in the stores, people are being squeezed tight because there are so many people in the stores. It can feel quite overwhelming. The poor woman in the center of the picture definitely looks overwhelmed. The number of choices were overwhelming. The number of choices of English teachers on YouTube might be overwhelming. So thank you so much for choosing me to watch. And you are watching a lot of this lesson. Thank you. I hope you are learning lots of new English. Just one favor, if you could hit that like button if you are learning English, and if you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe so you never miss another English lesson. I feel bad for my students sometimes because they come to us from other countries. Maybe they have never gone to school before, and they definitely do not speak English as a first language. I know their first day at my school is probably overwhelming for them. Let's look at a couple sentences describing some of my students. Her first day at the new school was overwhelming. She just got so much information thrown at her. She met so many new people. Sometimes when you are feeling overwhelmed, all you want to do is crawl in bed and go to sleep. I'm sure we have all done this before. Impulse buying. What does that mean? Buying something without planning or thinking about it. Hopefully, you have never bought a car or a house on impulse. We might also use that term too. You just don't think about it, you just buy it. She bought an expensive necklace on impulse and immediately regretted it. In other words, she wished she hadn't done that. And there is the woman in the picture holding the necklace and looking like she regrets buying that expensive piece of jewelry. Shop till you drop is something you might hear when talking about Black Friday in English. Yes, it should be shop until you drop, but it doesn't sound as good as shop till you drop. That means to shop for a long time. Take a look at that family. They look like they have been shopping a lot and they look exhausted. On Black Friday, we shopped till we dropped. Our feet were so sore the next day. What about catch your eye? When you're walking past a window, maybe you see something in that window that makes you want to buy it. We might say that it caught your eye. To notice something attractive, something that you like. The big sale signs caught my eye. We also have a term in English, window shopping, and that means you're not looking to buy anything, you are just looking. So maybe this person was window shopping. They weren't going into any stores, but that jacket with the good sale may have caught his eye, and maybe he will go in and purchase that. Purchase is another way to say buy. Make a killing. That means to earn a lot of money. The store made a killing with their sales. I don't know what the guy in the picture just sold, but it looks like he made a killing on whatever he sold. Oh, this one. What if money is burning a hole in your pocket? Now, it's an idiom. Of course, something like this doesn't really happen. But I did some research, and in multiple languages, you have an idiom that is similar. But to burn a hole in your pocket, it means to spend money quickly. My paycheck didn't have time to burn a hole in my pocket because I spent it so quickly. I asked my friend AI, what other languages have an idiom that is similar to burning a hole in your pocket? And they told me that French has it, German, Spanish, Italian, Russian, Portuguese, and Chinese, probably just to name a few. If your language was not represented, then please leave it in the comments. In your first language, do you have an idiom for burning a hole in your pocket? Oh no, I should have had my microphone in one hand and my phone in the other. Hopefully, you still heard that. The early bird gets the worm. Here is another expression, another idiom that we have in English when we talk about shopping. The early bird gets the worm means the first people to get the best deals. You have to wake up early to get good deals. On Black Friday, the early bird gets the worm. If you don't wake up early enough, well, your favorite item might sell out. What does that mean? To have no more of something. The toys sold out within an hour. There will be many disappointed children. That store looks like it is a mess, but you can see there are sold out signs all over that aisle. I wanted to get a new air fryer, but they were all sold out. It seems like there are always deals on air fryers on Black Friday. Maybe some people want to stock up on an air fryer. In the picture, there are a lot of air fryers. Apparently, it is a healthier way to cook. I mean, the person in the picture is definitely stocking up on air fryers. Maybe they are buying them for relatives and friends. But to stock up on something means to buy a lot of something for later. I stocked up on groceries during the sale. Where I live, we do get snow in the winter, so sometimes you might hear this. I stocked up on milk and bread before the big snowstorm. Here's another phrasal verb that you might hear for Black Friday: to mark down. That means to lower the price. They marked down prices on electronics. And it does look like that sales clerk is marking down the price of some kind of electronic thing. But mark can also mean like a blemish right here. A mark can also be a small spot, stain, or blemish on it, some kind of problem. Take a look at that picture. The table had a mark on it where the hot cup had been placed. You might not buy an item because it has a mark on it, but if it has a mark on it, it might get marked down. I hope that is not too confusing. When you have all of your purchases, all of the things that you want to buy, you will have to go to the checkout place where you pay for things. Or it can be a phrasal verb. To check out means to pay for items at a store. The checkout line was very long. That does happen on Black Friday. You have to line up for quite a while. Maybe you have to line up before you get into the store, and then to pay for your items, you have to line up again. Run out of is a lot like sold out. And by a lot like, I mean it is exactly the same thing. To run out of, it means to use all of something. The store ran out of the advertised TVs. I asked AI to create an image of a store that has run out of milk. They didn't quite understand the assignment because in that picture, I mean, the top row doesn't have a lot of milk, but if somebody wanted milk, they could definitely buy it. That store has not run out of milk. Let's take a look at a sentence using run out or ran out. The store ran out of milk because everyone was stocking up before the storm. 2 phrasal verbs we have used in this lesson already. Well, if you are buying clothing or jewelry, is that hard to say? Jewelry, you are going to probably want to try it on before you bring it home. What does that mean? To put on clothes to see if they fit. I tried on 5 pairs of jeans before buying one. And in the picture, it looks like that woman is trying on a ring before she buys it. Maybe she wants to see how it looks on her finger, or maybe she wants to see how it fits. If it is too loose, it could fall off. And if it is too tight, it might not fit at all. Sometimes you need a coupon to get a good deal. What is a coupon in English? It's a ticket for a discount. I used a coupon to save $10 on my new air fryer. We've had quite a few advanced terms so far. Let's do one that is probably review. Cash register. Cash register, it's a machine where you pay. The cashier rang up my items at the cash register. Rang up is another English phrasal verb we use when talking about shopping. That word is pronounced receipt. Receipt. I know there is a P in receipt, but we don't pronounce it. A receipt is a piece of paper showing what you bought. Keep your receipt in case you need a refund. A refund is different from store credit. Let's say you buy a shirt, you didn't try it on before you got home. When you got home, you finally tried it on and it didn't fit. So you bring it back to the store. Let's say you have your receipt. You can get your money back. If you don't have your receipt proving that you bought it, you might only get store credit. Store credit is the money that you paid for that shirt, but you can't use it anywhere. You just have to use it at that store. That's what we call store credit in English. Shopping cart. You might see some shopping carts on Black Friday. It's a basket on wheels for shopping. My shopping cart was full of toys. Now be careful. The United States is a big country. Most of us say shopping cart, but depending on where you are in the country, you might hear a shopping cart called a buggy. Customer service. This is where you can get help at a store. Maybe you want to see if they have your size in the back. You can ask customer service, or if you have a refund or a return, you didn't like the way something was fitting, you can go to customer service and ask for a refund. I went to customer service to return the sweater. And in the picture, it's exactly what is happening. That man is returning that sweater. Who knows? Maybe it was too big. Maybe his friend didn't like the color, but it looks like he wants to return it. Maybe he wants a refund, or maybe he just wants store credit. The checkout line, that is where you wait to pay. The checkout line was so long. Luckily in that picture, it looks like the checkout line is pretty short. She is not going to have to wait too long for the cashier to ring up her items. Let's get the official definition of refund. Money returned for something you don't want. I got a refund because the item was broken. We also have the expression be worth it, or is it worth it? That means to be good enough for the cost or the effort. Buying a new computer might not be worth it if you already have a computer that works pretty well. Waking up early was worth it for the deal. I never think Black Friday is worth getting out of bed, so most of the time I do not participate in Black Friday. I just stay right home. Some members of my family do like Black Friday. Think twice. You might think twice when you see a good deal. That means to reconsider something. You think about it quite a bit. It's the opposite of impulse buying. I thought twice before buying that expensive phone. What if you broke the bank on Black Friday? That means to spend too much money. I don't want to break the bank this Black Friday. Instead of breaking the bank on Black Friday, you probably want to stay on budget. And that means to spend only what you planned. I stayed on budget by shopping carefully. If someone is careful with their money, we might call them frugal. There's a little bonus term for you, frugal. Do you like watching the news? Do you also like improving your English? Well, I have good news for you. You have clicked on the right video. In this English lesson, we are going to talk about President Biden pardoning his son. So we need to talk about what it means to pardon someone. We need to talk about how presidents can do this, what that means for the person being pardoned. And to do that, we will watch a news clip. In that news clip, you will learn idioms, English phrasal verbs, advanced vocabulary to help you in your next English conversation, or if you are studying for the IELTS or TOEFL exams. My name is Brent. I have been teaching English in the United States for over 20 years. Before we watch the clip together, can I ask you to please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you never miss another English lesson. Let's watch the clip together, and then I will come back and teach you some difficult English.
With news from the White House, in a surprise about face, President Biden has issued a pardon for his son, Hunter.
Yeah, the president previously said that he would not pardon Hunter, who had pleaded guilty to tax evasion charges in September.
For each of these difficult terms, I will have a picture that helps you understand what they are talking about. I will have the official definition, and I will use that term in a sentence. They talked about President Biden doing an about face. Let's talk about what that means. An about face means to completely change your opinion or your decision. For a long time, President Biden said he would not pardon his son Hunter, but then he did an about face and pardoned his son. Let's look at a sentence that uses about face. The teacher made an about face and decided there would be no homework. Let's look at that picture. It looks like we have a teacher in the middle of that photo, a very young teacher, and his students look like they are super happy. So at one point, he told the class, hey, you are going to have homework. And for some reason, he changed his mind. He did an about face and said, guess what? No homework after all. The next one is pardon. Now, President Biden has a son, Hunter, and he got into a little trouble. We will talk about some of the things he did. For the things he did, Hunter Biden could have spent many years in jail, but his father changed that with the pardon. A pardon is when a person is forgiven for a crime and does not have to face punishment. So instead of spending many years in jail, Hunter will not have to do that. The president gave a pardon to the man so he didn't have to go to jail. That is not President Biden and his son in the picture, but it looks almost like them. You can see the president is holding a piece of paper that says pardon on it, and they are shaking hands. Obviously, the man who is being pardoned looks very happy.
With news from the White House, in a surprise about face, President Biden has issued a pardon for his son, Hunter.
Yeah, the president previously said that he would not pardon Hunter, who had pleaded guilty to tax evasion charges in September.
Another word that is mentioned in the newscast that might give English learners trouble is previously. Previously, that means before now, in the past. She had previously lived in another country before moving here. In the picture on the wall, it looks like there is a flag of England. And clearly in the middle of the picture is a woman with a suitcase. So maybe she's now living in the United States, but previously she lived in England. Tax evasion is one of the crimes that Hunter Biden was convicted of. Let's talk about what tax evasion is. That means not paying taxes when you're supposed to. Yeah, I guess he made over $1 million and did not pay taxes on that money. The government is definitely going to get their money eventually. In the United States, every April 15th, every American who owes taxes needs to pay that money. One of the most dreaded days in the United States. Let's look at a sentence that uses tax evasion. He was caught for tax evasion because he didn't pay his taxes.
The president previously said that he would not pardon Hunter, who had pleaded guilty to tax evasion charges in September and was convicted in a separate criminal case in June.
In his clemency announcement, the president called his son's treatment a, quote, miscarriage of justice.
In the newscast, they mention the word clemency. Let's talk about what that means. Clemency is when someone in charge is kind and reduces punishment. The judge gave clemency and made the punishment shorter. Now, Hunter Biden got pardoned, which means he doesn't have to serve any time. But the judge in the picture, if they are giving that man clemency, maybe they had to spend a year in jail, and the judge said, well, you only have to spend a couple months in jail. That would be clemency. Not quite as good as a pardon.
In his clemency announcement, the president called his son's treatment a, quote, miscarriage of justice.
KTLA5's Carlos Aceto joining us here in the studio tonight. He's got more on all of that. Carlos?
Right, Kareem, President Biden reversing course here, announcing he has pardoned his son, Hunter. Biden reportedly made the decision over the holiday weekend, surrounded by family. This full and unconditional pardon will cover both the gun charges conviction and guilty plea.
President-elect Donald Trump called this pardon a miscarriage of justice. President Biden and President-elect Trump have a history of not getting along. You can imagine if President Trump, or should I say President-elect Trump, can say something bad about President Biden, he will. But that word miscarriage is often used in a different way. It often involves a baby, and it is always very sad. A miscarriage is when a baby dies before it is born. She was sad because she had a miscarriage and lost the baby. Super sad. I can't imagine, but in the picture, we can see a couple sitting on a couch. They are both holding the woman's stomach. At one time, there was probably a baby in there, and for whatever reason, the baby was not born alive. They experienced a miscarriage. Reverse course. This is pretty much the same as doing an about face, our first term. Reverse course means to completely change your plan or decision. The company reversed course and brought back the old product. And in the picture, we have exactly that. For whatever reason, the new product didn't sell that well, so they are going to bring back the old one. I'm not sure how old you are. I am 49 years old. I am very old. But I remember when I was a kid, Coca-Cola, Coke. Do you know that product? I think it is pretty famous all around the world. Well, they came out with New Coke, and nobody liked New Coke, so Coca-Cola had to reverse course and bring back the old stuff that everybody liked.
President Biden reversing course here, announcing he has pardoned his son, Hunter. Biden reportedly made the decision over the holiday weekend, surrounded by family. This full and unconditional pardon will cover both the gun charges conviction and guilty plea. In a stunning reversal, President Joe Biden announcing Sunday that he has pardoned his son, Hunter, who was set to be sentenced on federal tax evasion and gun charges later this month. In his clemency statement, the president called his son's treatment a miscarriage of justice and politically motivated, adding, quote, "There has been an effort to break Hunter, who has been 5.5 years sober."
Unconditional. You often hear this with love, but unconditional means with no limits or rules. A dog gives unconditional love to its owner. I mean, I am not the biggest dog person in the world. I am allergic to dogs, but one thing I cannot deny is that dogs will give us unconditional love. No matter what we do, That dog will always love us.
Biden reportedly made the decision over the holiday weekend, surrounded by family. This full and unconditional pardon will cover both the gun charges conviction and guilty plea.
Plea is the next word I thought you might have trouble with, and that means a request or answer in court about being guilty or not guilty. So you may have to go before a judge and you can plead not guilty or guilty. He made a plea of not guilty to the judge. One thing that can be difficult about plea is the past tense of plea. So we have two ways you can use plea in the past tense. He stood up and pleaded not guilty in the courtroom, but you might also hear pled as the past tense of plea. He pled not guilty.
In a stunning reversal, President Joe Biden announcing Sunday that he has pardoned his son Hunter, who was set to be sentenced on federal tax evasion and gun charges later this month.
They also used stunning in the newscast. I would like to use it as an adjective, and then I would like to show you how we use it as a verb. Remember, an adjective describes nouns, and the definition is very surprising or amazing. The sunset over the ocean was stunning, and I must say, AI made this. I asked AI to create an image of a stunning sunset. I guess it could be a sunrise. But whatever it is, sunrise or sunset, I do agree with AI that that is stunning. But we can also use stunned as a verb, and it means pretty much the same thing, like super surprised, amazed, like you can't believe it. The American people were stunned when President Biden pardoned his son right before leaving office. I'm recording this on December 2nd. He pardoned his son very late on December 1st. His last day as being president is going to be January 20th. Some presidents will wait even longer to pardon people. If you would like me to do an entire lesson on presidential pardons, let me know. I can do that. We will talk about a couple towards the end of this lesson, but some are very interesting, I think.
Adding, quote, there has been an effort to break Hunter, who has been 5.5 years sober, even in the face of unrelenting attacks and selective prosecution. In trying to break Hunter, they've tried to break me, and there's no reason to believe it will stop here.
Sober. They talked about Hunter Biden being sober for, was it 5 years? Let's talk about what sober means. It means not drunk. He stayed sober so he could drive home safely. And in the picture, you can see a man is being offered a beer. He is putting his hand up and saying, no, thank you. Unrelenting is the next word, and that means never giving up or nonstop. The unrelenting rain lasted all day and night. I hope this is true for you. Her passion for learning English was unrelenting. She thought about it day and night. Your passion for learning English must be unrelenting because you are still watching. I have been teaching English for quite a few minutes now, and here you are. Congratulations, you are maybe halfway through this lesson.
In his clemency statement, the president called his son's treatment a miscarriage of justice and politically motivated, adding, quote, there has been an effort to break Hunter, who has been 5.5 years sober, even in the face of unrelenting attacks and selective prosecution. In trying to break Hunter, they've tried to break me, and there's no reason to believe it will stop here.
I think the truth is that a pardon for Hunter Biden was likely always on the table, and it was probably a matter of when, not if.
On the table. Let's talk about what on the table means. It is an idiom. It has nothing to do with an object being on the table. Instead, it means ready to be talked about or decided. The teacher said all the ideas were on the table for the project. I came up with this sentence. Don't ask me why I came up with this example as a teacher, but firing teachers was a topic that was on the table for tonight's meeting. I don't know. Maybe the school district has to save some money, so they are thinking about firing some teachers. Okay, this one is pretty tough. I couldn't really come up with a picture for this one, but we have a saying in English. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And you can use this when you know something is going to be done. It's a matter of when, not if, he will pass the test because he studies a lot. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when it comes to her English learning. She will learn English. It might just take some time. There are many examples of presidents pardoning people, and sometimes they will pardon their own family members. One famous time was when Bill Clinton pardoned his half-brother. Bill Clinton, in 2001, pardoned his half-brother, Roger Clinton, for drug-related charges. This was one of the controversial pardons issued during his final days in office. I have talked about controversial before in English. That means some people will agree, but many people will disagree. Not everybody agrees on the subject. Two of the most controversial topics in the United States right now are gun laws and abortion. And since other presidents have pardoned family members, there is precedent for that. Now, I didn't say president like Joe Biden. I said precedent. It's very different. Precedent means an example that is used to guide further decisions. Basically, because it has been done in the past, we can do it now. The teacher set a precedent of letting the students choose their seats. The opposite would be assigned seats. When I taught younger students, I would always assign seats on the first day, but now that I teach high school students, they are a little more mature. I let them choose their own seats.
I think the truth is that a pardon for Hunter Biden was likely always on the table, and it was probably a matter of when, not if.
Loyola law professor Jessica Levinson says there is plenty of precedents for a president to pardon a member of his family, even if Biden previously said he wouldn't grant Hunter clemency.
The reason we see this flip-flop is because, frankly, there really aren't going to be any political implications for him. We have a president who decided not to run for re-election, who will never run for another election in his life, and who is acting like a father who has the power of the presidency.
Hunter was set to be sentenced for his federal gun conviction and for a separate criminal case. The pardon comes less than 2 months of Donald Trump retaking office. The Republican has been critical of the Biden family. On Truth Social, Trump blasted Biden's clemency, saying, quote, "Does the pardon given by Joe to Hunter include the J6 hostages who have now been imprisoned for years? Such an abuse and miscarriage of justice." Trump referring to the January 6th insurrectionists. Biden says he hopes Americans understand why a father and a president could come to this decision.
Flip-flop. We have a couple different ways in English we use flip-flop. The way they use it in the news report is to change your opinion or decision suddenly, exactly like reverse course and do an about face. If you flip-flop, it means you change your mind. The coach flip-flopped and decided to let the player join the game. In sports, things can change quickly. Maybe this coach told the player, hey, you're not going to be playing. But something happened during the game, and the coach thought it was best for the player to get in there. He flip-flopped. But flip-flops can also be a type of shoe. There is a pair of flip-flops in that picture. A flip-flop can also be a type of shoe often worn at the beach. I never wear flip-flops. I do not think they are comfortable, but I know many people who do wear flip-flops. Flip-flops are great for the beach because the sand won't get stuck in your shoes. Critical. If you have been watching this channel for a couple months, You will maybe know this word because I've talked about it before. It means very important. It is critical to study before a big test. And that woman looks like she is being a good student, and it looks like she is studying. Who knows? Maybe she is studying English or some other subject. In the newscast, they also mentioned January 6th. I have talked about this day before as well. The day in 2021 when people attacked the U.S. Capitol. The building in the picture is called the U.S. Capitol Building. The events of January 6th caused many people to feel worried about the country. So the people that were convicted of breaking into the Capitol building, they are spending time in jail right now. President Trump says he might pardon some of those people who attacked the Capitol building. AI created this picture of January 6th. The damage was not this bad, but there were definitely people who broke into the Capitol building, did a lot of damage. Not good. Not good at all. What is going on in South Korea? Just a few hours ago, the South Korean president declared martial law. If you like watching the news, if you like politics, but you also want to learn English, this channel is for you. In today's English lesson, we are going to watch a news clip from Australia, so you will be able to listen to a different accent in English. And of course, the news uses really advanced English, idioms, English phrasal verbs. So once we watch the clip together, I will come back and teach all of those difficult terms. And if you are studying for the IELTS or the TOEFL exam, this will just be a bonus. There is a good chance you could find some of these terms on that exam.
It's right in our backyard and it just exploded. South Korea thrown into chaos as the army took over parliament and citizens took to the streets in wild scenes.
South Korea's government on the verge of collapse. It began late last night with a presidential announcement that shocked the country and the world.
I declare martial law to protect the Free Republic of Korea from the threat of North Korea communist forces.
I have 25 terms for you. For most of them, I have a picture, and for all of them, I have the official definition, and I will use that term in a sentence. Chaos. Let's talk about chaos. I have talked about chaos before on this channel not too long ago, probably just a couple weeks ago. But chaos is a time when everything is very messy and out of control. And unfortunately, that is what is going on in South Korea right now. The Korean Peninsula can be a pretty chaotic place. That is the adjective form of chaos. You know, just to the north of South Korea, we have North Korea, or at least that is what we call that country in English, and it is known for having a dictator. Not a lot of freedom in North Korea. I think the world looks at South Korea to be the stable country. We will talk about stable in just a minute. The streets were full of chaos after the big protest. And if you take a look at that picture, it definitely looks pretty chaotic. It looks like there is a lot of chaos on the street. On the verge. I couldn't come up with a great picture for on the verge, but let's take a look at the definition. It means very close to something happening. The country is on the verge of a major change. That is just an example sentence. I hope that doesn't happen in South Korea. I hope everything stays pretty much the same. Maybe they will be getting a new president, but I hope that they continue to be a democratic state. Again, we will talk about democratic in just a minute. I hope you are on the verge of understanding everything in English. This is a pretty advanced lesson, so don't worry if you don't understand everything.
It's right in our backyard and it just exploded. South Korea thrown into chaos as the army took over parliament and citizens took to the streets in wild scenes.
South Korea's government on the verge of collapse. It began late last night with a presidential announcement that shocked the country and the world.
I declare martial law to protect the Free Republic of Korea from the threat of North Korea Communist forces, to eradicate the despicable pro-North Korean anti-state forces that are plundering freedom and happiness of our people.
The president of South Korea, Yoon Suk-yeol, declared martial law. And yes, that is the verb we would use, declare. Later, we'll also talk about invoke is another verb we might use, but I think the newscast used declared martial law. Let's talk about what martial law is. Martial law is when the military takes control of the country's laws and order. Believe it or not, martial law has been declared a few times in the United States. If you would like me to do an English lesson about martial law in the United States, please let me know in the comments. Here's a sentence using martial law. The president declared martial law to stop the violence. Again, that is just an example sentence. I don't think there was any violence before the president declared martial law. There was a little violence after the president declared martial law. Thankfully, it doesn't sound like anybody was seriously hurt. And even though the news reporters have an Australian accent, as an American, I can understand everything they say. So hearing other accents in English will really help you improve your English listening skills. Eradicate. Eradicate is the next one, to completely get rid of something. The government wants to eradicate corruption in the country. We also use eradicate when we talk about diseases. In the picture, it looks like this man is getting a shot, maybe to prevent a disease. In English, we have two diseases we call polio and smallpox. And thanks to modern medicine, those two diseases have almost been eradicated from the entire world. It is not something we have to worry about anymore. Let's take a look at a sentence that uses that idea. Vaccines have helped eradicate polio and smallpox from the world. Ugh, despicable. Take a look at that picture because it has something to do with the example sentence. But let's first look at the official definition for despicable. It means very bad or shameful behavior. Stealing from the poor is a despicable act. And in the picture, it looks like that man on the right, he could be rich. He's dressed very nicely. He is wearing a blindfold for some reason, but he is taking money from maybe somebody who doesn't have a lot of money. That would be despicable. I asked AI, create a picture of somebody stealing from the poor, and that is what they designed. I have a few crazy pictures from AI a little later on in the lesson. Speaking of stealing things, plundering. Plundering means stealing things by force, especially during chaos, one of our other words. The city suffered from plundering after the protests. Take a look at that picture. It definitely looks like things are being plundered. It looks like there is a lot of chaos, but be careful. Below is a little hint. Plunder is not an exact synonym of steal or rob. You wouldn't plunder a bank. If a bank is being plundered, I would think there is a lot of other chaos around the bank at the time. Usually banks are robbed.
I declare martial law to protect the Free Republic of Korea from the threat of North Korea Communist forces, to eradicate the despicable pro-North Korean anti-state forces that are plundering freedom and happiness of our people.
It's the first time South Korea has been under martial law since 1980. Helicopters descending on the National Assembly as troops stormed in through windows. Furious protesters clashed with the military, taking to the streets in the middle of the night.
After watching the news, I felt anxious, and I also thought that this is such a national shame.
We are watching the recent developments and we are okay with grave concern.
I think AI did a pretty good job with this picture. Furious. Furious. It means very angry. The people were furious about the new law. Yeah, if you look at that news clip, the people in South Korea seem furious that martial law was declared, and who can blame them? The subtitles aren't perfect on this part of the newscast, but the ROK is another way we would talk about South Korea in English. Let's look at the official definition. Short for the Republic of Korea. South Korea, not North Korea. In English, we also have an acronym for North Korea, and that is DPRK. In other words, the People's Republic of Korea. But we're not talking about North Korea in this lesson, although it does sometimes sound like North Korea. Let's look at a sentence using ROK. The ROK president made an important announcement today. Yeah, it was pretty important. It did not last long, and it might cost him his job. His days are numbered. We will talk about that in just a minute.
We are watching the recent developments and we are okay with grave concern. Martial law is the suspension of civilian rule for military authority, handing unlimited power to the military commander in times of war or natural disaster. It was once common in South Korea, but hasn't been invoked for more than 40 years.
Earlier in the English lesson, I talked about declaring martial law. You could also use invoke. Let's talk about what invoke means. To use a law or rule to make something happen. This is used for big, important things. The president invoked a special law to stop the protests. Just an example sentence there. That did not really happen in South Korea.
Martial law is the suspension of civilian rule for military authority, handing unlimited power to the military commander in times of war or natural disaster. It was once common in South Korea, but hasn't been invoked for more than 40 years.
People could be prosecuted, put in jail without any kind of real reason. So the last thing they wanted was to return to martial law because it meant a failure of the democratic system.
Yes, South Korea is a democratic system. We saw how that worked. The president did something that most of the people did not like, and it was quickly undone. I think they said it lasted about 6 hours. But in a democratic system, you have a government where people vote for their leaders. I would like to think that while I am living in the United States, we have a democratic system. In fact, we just had an election about a month ago. South Korea has a democratic system, but people are worried about its future.
So the last thing they wanted was to return to martial law because it meant a failure of the democratic system.
While President Yoon cited an unspecified threat from North Korea as the cause of his declaration, opponents claim it was prompted by his own scandals and plummeting popularity.
They mentioned unspecified. Unspecified, that means not clearly said or explained. The president spoke about an unspecified plan for the future. In the newscast, they talked about an unspecified threat from North Korea. Unspecified is the opposite of specific. It would be different if there was a specific threat from North Korea. People would know about it. The president could talk about it, but it seems a little fishy when it's unspecified. Do you know that word fishy? That adjective? It describes things that might not be true. Plummeting. They said plummeting. Plummeting means falling very quickly. Just an example sentence here. Luckily, this is not true. The value of the country's money is plummeting. In English, we have something called an approval rating. We usually use it with presidents. It means how much the people like that president. I think that in South Korea, the president's approval rating is plummeting. Take a look at that picture. A large rock or meteor is plummeting towards Earth. Geez. That's all we need right now, right? There is a lot of chaos in the world. We don't need things plummeting from the sky.
And plummeting popularity. And just hours after the declaration, the National Assembly voted to overturn it. The declaration of martial law is now invalid.
They also use invalid in the newscast. That means not true or not legal. The court said the election results were invalid.
I will accept the Parliament's request and lift martial law through a cabinet meeting.
The only reason that people can come up with in this case is real desperation.
Desperation. Desperation is the next one. That means a very strong feeling of needing help or a solution. In desperation, people begged the government to help. So take a look below. Desperation is the noun. You can feel desperation, but you can describe someone as desperate. And the woman in the picture looks desperate to get concert tickets. She was desperate to find tickets for tonight's show. She desperately wanted to find tickets for tonight's show. In that second sentence, desperately is an adverb. It describes a verb.
South Korea's largest union has said it will go on strike until Yoon resigns, and the National Assembly will charge him with insurrection and push for his impeachment. But its success would depend on members of Yoon's own party turning against him.
He should step down, resign immediately. This is the mandate of the people.
My sense is that in light of other previous presidents and their misdeeds, if you like, he's likely to go to jail for a number of years.
So are the president's days numbered? And will his departure be enough to end the chaos plaguing the country?
All right, AI did a pretty good job with this picture for insurrection. Let's talk about the definition and then the sentence, and we'll take a look at the picture. Insurrection means a violent attempt to take over the government. Scary, scary stuff. The military stopped the insurrection in the capital city. In the picture, you can see the U.S. Capitol building. That is a big center for our government in Washington, D.C. On January 6th, 2021, there was an insurrection on the Capitol building, but AI messed up a little bit. Like, you can see people jumping out of the window. I would think that they would be breaking through the window, trying to get into the building, but I hope you get the idea of what an insurrection is. Step down. We have an English phrasal verb here. That means to leave an important job or position. I think a lot of people are calling for the South Korean president to step down. The president might step down because of the protests. That is just an example sentence. The president might have to step down because so many citizens are mad at him. And if a president has people who are mad at him, well, maybe his days are numbered. That means something will not last much longer. The leader's days are numbered if people continue to protest.
South Korea's largest union has said it will go on strike until Yoon resigns, and the National Assembly will charge him with insurrection and push for his impeachment. But its success would depend on members of Yoon's own party turning against him.
He should step down, resign immediately. This is the mandate of the people.
My sense is that in light of other previous presidents and their misdeeds, if you like, he's likely to go to jail for a number of years.
So are the president's days numbered? And will his departure be enough to end the chaos plaguing the country?
Plaguing is the next one. Plaguing, causing trouble or problems for a long time. Corruption has been plaguing the government for years. I'll make that picture a little bigger. In the picture, you can see a city has a lot of people who are homeless. They don't have jobs. They probably don't have a lot of money. Here's an example sentence for this picture. The bad economy has been plaguing many American cities.
So are the president's days numbered? And will his departure be enough to end the chaos plaguing the country? Well, In Bum-chun is a retired South Korean Army Lieutenant General. South Korea is supposed to be the stable bit of the Korean Peninsula.
We talked about chaos earlier, or chaotic, but in the newscast, they also mentioned stable, which is the opposite of chaos. Stable means strong, not likely to fall or change. People want a stable government to feel safe. Let's compare stable, stability, chaos, and chaotic. Stable, or stability, is the opposite of chaos or chaotic. Chaotic is an adjective. Chaos is the noun. Stable is the adjective. You can describe a government as stable, but stability is a noun. People want stability in their government.
Well, In Bum-chun is a retired South Korean Army Lieutenant General. South Korea is supposed to be the stable bit of the Korean Peninsula. How shocking was it for you to see your president go on TV and declare martial law like that?
Yes, maybe because we are a stable democracy. It was quite a shock. During my military career, I've had many instances where the unexpected had occurred, and it just was a gut-wrenching feeling that you always have. And yesterday evening was one of those moments.
Gut-wrenching. Gut-wrenching. Very upsetting and emotional. Seeing the destruction in the city was gut-wrenching. I asked AI to create a picture about this. I will read the sentences and then I will talk about the picture. I think AI made a mistake, maybe two. I'm sure when Morocco lost to France in the World Cup, it was gut-wrenching to many Moroccan people. It was a gut-wrenching loss. Now, I love everything about this picture almost. I mean, I am sorry that Morocco lost that game back in 2022. I was actually rooting for Morocco. I was pulling for Morocco. We would call Morocco the underdog. I mean, France was supposed to win that game, but it would have been nice for a lot of people if Morocco won. A lot of people like to root for the underdog or for the team that doesn't always win. But oh boy, I don't know what AI did to France's flag. It's almost like they combined the Moroccan flag with the French flag. Come on, AI. You need to do better next time. I love using AI because it creates some interesting pictures. Just sometimes they mess up. It's getting better every day, though.
You've served at the highest level of your nation's army. What's it like seeing the army being used and deployed in this way? Clearly, the population, the parliament, doesn't support it.
It's very, very sad. The men think they're following orders, which is the easy thing to do. But actually what they should be doing is doing the right thing. And I think that's what they did yesterday. So The days of martial law for unlawful purposes are gone. But I'm not saying that, yesterday was totally unlawful.
General, I feel like you're choosing your words very carefully.
In the newscast, they talked about choosing your words carefully. Let's talk about what that means. It means thinking carefully before speaking. The president is choosing his words carefully to avoid more anger. Let's take a look at that picture. It looks like a man is being interrogated by the police. Anytime you talk to the police, you should choose your words carefully. You don't want to accidentally say something that will get you into more trouble. Now, I need to be clear. I have never had to talk to the police like that, so I am not talking from experience.
General, I feel like you're choosing your words very carefully. Hasn't your country and the region just become a bit less stable?
I wouldn't say that. Korea has always been, we don't have earthquakes, but we have political earthquakes. And as you saw, it lasted 6 hours, which is close to a comedy, but thank God. And so it's just a normal day on the Korean Peninsula for me. Having said that, my president, I wouldn't use the word reckless. He's still my president, but I would not have done that.
If you had to use one word to describe the effectiveness of this whole stunt, if you want to call it that, what would you say?
Bizarre and very embarrassing.
Well, adding to all of this potentially, General, there's a crazy dictator next door who's got a pretty firm grip on power. What do you think he reckons about all this?
I think he was surprised too, which is a good thing.
They talk about the Korean Peninsula. Korean Peninsula. What is a peninsula? Well, it's a piece of land almost surrounded by water. It's basically like an island, but there is one part of that island that is connected to more land. North Korea and South Korea share a peninsula. I think AI did a pretty good job with that picture of a peninsula. You have a piece of land that is surrounded by water on 3 sides. A stunt is the next one. We have a couple different ways we use stunt in English, but in the newscast, they used it like this: an action done to get attention. Many people think the new law is just a political stunt.
The thing is, the Korean Peninsula is really sort of a tiny speck on the map, but it's so fragile because of the situation with North Korea.
Speck. It looks like in the picture, that person has a couple specks of dirt on their sweater. Let's talk about what a speck is. It's a tiny spot or small piece of something. From the top of the mountains, the city looked like a speck in the distance. Welcome back to another English lesson. This is going to be more of a vlog style English lesson, because you are going to come with me to Massachusetts and then eventually to New York City. But it's kind of late right now. We're getting a late start. I mean, you really can't see anything out there. And when I mean a late start, it's late for me. I might disappear, but it's almost 6 o'clock and it's completely dark. But the reason we are getting such a late start is that I worked today. If this is your first time here, I am an English teacher in the United States, and my wife is also, but she had something called parent-teacher conferences. I will explain that once I get all of my luggage into it's a rental car. Got to get the fan in there. We need a fan to sleep at night. Parent-teacher conferences. A couple times a year, teachers will stay late after school. She has to stay at school until 7 p.m. to meet with all of her students' parents. Yeah, they do it a couple times a year. My school does too. We had ours a couple weeks ago, just in case the parents want to talk to us to see face to face how their children are doing in our class. The next time I see you, I might be at our hotel in Massachusetts, or I may stop and talk to you along the way. We made it. Fairfield Inn, I think we're at. This camera isn't waterproof, but after a grueling 2 hours of driving, yeah, it was grueling. We're finally here. There was a horn in the background, but I'm going to record this hotel English lesson tomorrow morning, okay? Because it is just nasty out. Raining the whole way. Windshield wipers going the entire time. Plus it's a little too dark to see anything, but I'm gonna get some sleep and I'll see you in the morning. It's the next morning. Maybe you can tell the sun is shining brightly. Unfortunately, it's a little brisk out here. It's another way to say it's a little cold, but the sun looks like it is going to be shining today. The weather should be pretty good. We are going into the city today. It's another way to say you're going to visit New York City. Some people, at least in the Northeast, I think, of the United States, will call New York City just the city. What I'm trying to do is get over to my rental car to show you what it looks like during the day. There are still some puddles on the ground because it was really raining quite a bit. I think I said that last night. It was raining quite a bit on the ride down here. But this is the rental car. In the daytime, still lots of drops on it, but it looks like it has had a nice wax job. Unlike my cars at home, I don't really take care of them that much. Like I said, I'm not a car guy. I don't know much about cars. I just know this one was new and it was pretty cheap. And it has Massachusetts license plates. Yeah, where I'm from in Maine, we often say that the people in Massachusetts don't know how to drive. I'm staying at the Fairfield Inn. It was a Thursday night last night. It costed me $111, which wasn't too bad. King size bed. The bed was kind of hard, but I slept pretty well. Oh, what's over here? It's very early still in the morning. This business is not going to be open, but it looks like there is a spa, which makes me think you could get your nails done there? No, maybe not. I'm not sure if you can see that, but it says acupuncture and body work. So acupuncture is done with needles, put needles in the body, and maybe body works, there are massages maybe you can get, but I don't think you can get your hair done or your nails done. And they served a good breakfast here. I will take some video of that and I will show it while I'm talking here, but they had yogurt, they had eggs, which is what I had. And I think I had a piece of toast with peanut butter. If I wanted to, I could go across the street and get some Dunkin' Donuts, but look at Dunkin' Donuts is very popular for coffee. I'm not sure if you can see, but there is a big line at the drive-through window. So that's maybe one reason why I don't get Dunkin' Donuts that often. You're always waiting in line in the morning, and it's quite expensive. And I don't drink a lot of coffee. All right, also, the room right now is probably a little messy because we unpacked all of our clothes. Jamie and I just carried a backpack each. We are going to leave our car at the train station in Connecticut. I'll show you that. So we just have our backpacks, but everything is laid out. Showers have been taken. We have taken showers. So that is probably a little dirty in there, but but I will show you what the room looked like before we got it all dirty. And then I'll see you when we are in Connecticut. How about that? Here's a look at our hotel room. The bed was fairly comfortable, a little hard. The bathroom was everything we wanted. It had shampoo, conditioner, body wash, plenty of towels to use. The breakfast was all right. Scrambled eggs in one pot. And over here, yeah, these are pork products, so be careful if you are staying at a hotel in the United States. A lot of pork, probably. Some oatmeal with some toppings there. And everybody's favorite, peanut butter. Americans love peanut butter. I don't think the rest of the world does. Plenty of bagels and muffins for breakfast. Yeah, the exercise room. I did not use it. After a 2-hour drive, we made it to the parking garage, and then we are going to try to get a ticket from this station here in Connecticut into New York City. We parked on the first floor, but we had to go all the way up to the 4th floor for what's called a pedestrian bridge. Pedestrian means a walker, and so you can walk across to the train station from here. But do you see that? Have you ever heard of the WWE, I think it's called? It used to be WWF. Well, their headquarters are here in Stamford, Connecticut. We just got our tickets. It was super easy. You can go to the kiosk. We'd call that thing a kiosk, where there's an actual person who will give you information and you can buy the ticket from him. He was super friendly. We need track 3. We are going back into Grand Central Station. Always a lot of people here. About 750,000 people use this station every day. It is the largest train station in the world, built back in 1871. All right, we just got a train into Grand Central Station. Now we need to take another train to our Airbnb. It's on the Long Island Railroad. They do have bathrooms on this train. Would you like to check out a bathroom on this train? Not bad. I think it's like a 30-minute train ride. I don't think I'll need the bathroom, but it's good to know that it's here if I do need it. Hey, it is the next day. I did not film because it was all rainy and pretty dark by the time we arrived here, but this is our Airbnb, and it is in the borough of New York City called Queens. I think it's the only city that I can think of that has what we call boroughs. There's like Brooklyn, Staten Island. I don't know all the boroughs of New York City. I could probably look that up for you, but look at that. This is where we stayed. Brooklyn, Queens, I'm forgetting Staten Island, I'm forgetting 2 of them. But the place where we stayed is right downstairs. I'll show you that in a minute. But there's also a hot tub here, but we could only use it from the hours of 10 p.m. to midnight. And Jamie and I were in bed by that time. It was a long day for us. Let me check here. I can't use the hot tub now, but let's see what, I haven't been here yet. Ooh. The hot tub's over there. We'll take a look. But this is being shared with another family, so I don't want to dig around too much. Yeah, it would have been nice to come out here last night, but it was also raining too. So look at this, they must have children, because it looks like we might call that a putting green for golf, a putting green. Yeah, so we're going to go into the city today. It's about, I think, a half an hour train ride. We're going to take the same train that we took yesterday. And we'll get into New York City, and I will show you around there. But once Jamie is done getting ready, I'll show you what the downstairs looks like. And I have two words I'd like to teach you. Rickety, that will be the first one. And I forgot, what's the other one? Stuffy? It might be stuffy. I can talk about stuffy right now. It was a little hot last night. And stuffy means like it's a little hard to breathe. But it was stuffy down there. They have a dehumidifier running. I'll show you that in a minute. But last night it got a little stuffy, a little hot. Just the air felt hot. That's what stuffy is. I want to take a little tour of our Airbnb. It's a little tight getting in here. I'm already inside, but if two people, not sure if you can see that, but if two people are trying to come in, you can't. You have to do it one at a time. But they told me to leave the keys in this little white box when we check out. Oh, also, hot tub rules. Again, we didn't use the hot tub, unfortunately. Okay, rickety. I want to teach you that word. Rickety. That is a handrail, but like the screws are coming out of it. So when I first came here and I grabbed the handrail, I got quite a surprise because it was rickety. Rickety, just like that. It means it's not exactly stable. Like if you were crossing a rickety bridge, you might fall into the water. Somebody lives upstairs, but there is a padlock there, so they can't get down here. But let's go down. Be careful of the handrail here. It's a nice little place. Basement apartment, I think we would call it. And for the hot tub, they do have 2 robes, couple slippers. Remember when we visited, there might be some rocks on the ground. So you don't want to wear your shoes, but you don't want to be completely barefoot. So they provided slippers. They provided 2 towels here, which Jamie and I used when we took our showers, and then 2 extra towels for the hot tub. But you can only have a maximum of 2 guests staying here per night. So like my son, he is in New York City now, but he could not have stayed with us last night. He's getting done with his school, so he is going to meet us in New York City. Let's take a look. There's the bed. There's my camera equipment and my backpack. Hopefully you can hear me because there is a dehumidifier running. It gets wet down here, I'm sure. And there is a dehumidifier running. Dehumidifiers take moisture out of the air. Hang on, let me see. Can I shut that off real quick? Because we're not going to be here anymore. Hit the power button. Well, it's a little lower. I don't have my glasses on, so I could not read those buttons. All right, it's a little quieter now, but there is a kitchen here. Nothing left in the fridge, I don't think. It's a koozie. That was here before we got here. Koozie, we call it in English. It's designed to keep your drinks cold. Some more house rules there. No smoking, of course. Don't have to worry about that. Clean your feet to avoid dirt coming inside. Yeah, hot tub hours. Only 2 hours, and Jamie and I are both very old, so like I said, we were asleep. But it has pretty much anything you would need. Some decorations there, some hearts when we came in. That was here already. Somebody left some type of beer. everything you need. A little plant. They told us to leave the towels on the ground when we were done. There's a big mirror there. A couple wine glasses we did not use. Cute little setup here. Very nice bathroom. Shower. Nice shower head there. Yeah. Very nice. Would I stay here again? I probably wouldn't. It was just too stuffy last night. It's still quite hot. So I have a sweatshirt and a jacket on. But outside it's 40 degrees, so that is nice. Literally everything else is locked up. Yeah, right there. It's probably where they keep the cleaning supplies, but that is, ooh, a lot of decorations. You can have it decorated pretty much for different occasions like graduations, honeymoons, birthday parties. But nice little place. Oh, this didn't work. I wanted this to work because we could have cooled it down. But so, and we're quite far from the city. $255 we paid for this place, which probably not that bad. But I probably wouldn't stay here again. All right, let's get into New York City and see what's going on there. I don't know if I really showed the neighborhood, but it's a cute neighborhood. Nice little houses here. I think it is probably pretty expensive to live here, being so close to New York City, but still has the feel of like a small neighborhood. Christmas is about a month away, and they have their Christmas wreaths up. Nice picket fences here. We would call those white fences, probably picket fences. And this road might be closed because of construction. But it is a Saturday, so I don't think anybody will be working. But it looks like they are tearing up the road. Not sure what they could possibly be doing here. Maybe working under the street for some reason. Maybe the water pipes or something. I don't know. I'm just an English teacher. But no, the road is not closed. You can still travel down this road, but whatever that big steel box is, it looks like it probably has to go back underground. Yeah, must be something to do with the water system. We just got to our hotel. It's called the Chelsea Savoy Hotel, and it's really early. It's like 10:30 in the morning, and check-in isn't until 3, but the man at the desk said we could leave our bags here, and if we wanted some coffee, use the bathroom, have some pastries. Let me show you what the lobby looks like. Got to pull. I say pull here too. So yeah, he let us leave our bags right here. Looks like a pretty nice hotel, only a half a mile away from Madison Square Garden, which is where we are going tonight for our concert. Yeah, looks like nice and old. Got a good time feeling. Look at these pastries, he said. Even though we are not staying here tonight, he said if we wanted some pastries, some bagels, some muffins, some juice, some water, I think we are going to like it here. Walking past Madison Square Garden, first built in 1879. It is called the world's most famous arena. I'm not sure if that is true, but the New York Knicks, a basketball team, plays here. Brooklyn Bagel and Coffee Company. This place was amazing. There was quite a long line here, but in New York City, things are very efficient. Things work really well So we didn't have to wait that long for our bagel, but look at all of those cream cheeses. You can see my thumb in the picture for a little bit. Sorry about that. I went with the pumpkin cream cheese. There's the bagel. I got an everything bagel with pumpkin cream cheese. They filled that bagel with cream cheese. Very famous store in New York City, and there are others around the country known for the Thanksgiving Day Parade. There you can see a shot of Empire State Building, nicely decorated for Christmas. This is the inside of the store. I guess you could buy some perfume there. And I'm going up the escalator, and I just fell. I was trying to get the shot, and I fell. Now we're going into the subway to get to the Metropolitan Museum of Art, but we walked through Central Park and it was an absolutely beautiful day. Looks like these people were playing flag football. So it's like American football, but nobody is tackling because they're not wearing equipment. The Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York is massive, and it's a really long title for the museum, so you might just hear it called the Met. But this was their section for ancient Egypt, and that structure was originally in Egypt. It was brought here brick by brick. And in English, we call that writing hieroglyphics. You'll see a really good shot of hieroglyphics here. And we ended the day at a concert. My favorite band, Dave Matthews Band, played my favorite song. It's called The Stone. What is going on in Syria? Yesterday, they had a president, and now it seems like that president has left the capital. There are reports that he left in a plane, and that plane possibly crashed. Since that story has not been confirmed, we will focus on a new government in Syria. And together, we will watch a news clip in English. I have slowed it down just a little bit. I have put the words on the screen to help you. And then I will come back and teach the most difficult words they talk about in that newscast. I have 20 idioms, advanced vocabulary, English phrasal verbs that you might find on the IELTS or TOEFL exam. Or maybe you just want to use them in your next English conversation. Or maybe you just want to watch the news in English, which is a great way to improve your English. Let's take a look at a clip, and then I will come back and teach some English.
Government apparently has fallen after a sudden rebel offensive sprinted into the capital of Damascus. And tonight there are reports that Syrian President Bashar al-Assad has fled the country. The move brings a stunning end to the 50-year rule of the Assad family.
Before we get to the first term, if you don't mind, please hit that like button so other English learners will find the channel. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please don't be afraid to subscribe so you never miss another English lesson. For each of these words, I will have the official definition. I will use it in a sentence, and for the most difficult ones, I will have a picture. Let's look at this first one, sprinted. Sprinted means to run very fast for a short distance. In the newscast, they talked about the rebel forces sprinting towards Damascus, the capital of Syria. Or at least that's what we say in English, Damascus, Syria. The example sentence is a little bit different from the newscast. As rebel forces entered Damascus, people sprinted to safety. As rebel forces entered Damascus, it looked like most people were pretty happy. They were not sprinting for safety, they were sprinting to celebrate. Fled means to run away from danger or a threatening situation. That verb is in the past tense. The present tense is flee. Let's use fled in a sentence. President Bashir al-Assad fled Damascus as rebels took control of the city. Now, I know the definition says to run away from danger, but the people in the picture could be fleeing from a dangerous situation, even though they aren't running.
Government apparently has fallen after a sudden rebel offensive sprinted into the capital of Damascus. And tonight there are reports that Syrian President Bashar al-Assad has fled the country. The move brings a stunning end to the 50-year rule of the Assad family.
I think most would call the situation in Syria stunning. How quickly the rebels moved in. Let's talk about what stunning means. It means extremely surprising or shocking. The rebels achieved a stunning victory by capturing Damascus so quickly. And clearly the woman in the photo is stunned about something. Stunned would be the verb, stunning would be the adjective.
Government apparently has fallen after a sudden rebel offensive sprinted into the capital of Damascus. And tonight there are reports that Syrian President Bashar al-Assad has fled the country. The move brings a stunning end to the 50-year rule of the Assad family.
Eyewitness News reporter Leanne Sitter joins us live from our newsroom with the latest on this breaking news. Leanne?
Hey, Michelle, the rapidly changing events shaking the region. Several countries shutting down their borders with Syria as the rebels take control of the country.
Rapidly, that is an adverb. Adverbs describe verbs, adjectives, and other adverbs. Rapidly means happening very quickly. Rebel forces rapidly advanced through Syria, capturing several cities. In that sentence below, advanced is the verb and rapidly is describing that verb. I've mentioned rebels a few times in this English lesson. Let's make sure you know what rebels means. Basically, if there is a government in power, rebels are the people who want to see that government change, and they fight against it. Let's look at the official definition. People who fight against the government or authority. That is another way to say people who are in power, authority. The rebels took control of Damascus, ending Assad's rule. And we are going to talk about how long the Assad family ruled Syria. Guess what? It's quite a long time.
The rapidly changing events shaking the region. Several countries shutting down their borders with Syria as rebels take control of the country. Celebrations in Damascus as crowds topple a statue after a coalition of Islamist rebel groups called HTS sweep across Syria, taking control of the troubled country.
The next one is topple, and that means to overthrow or remove from power, at least the way they used it in the newscast. The rebels managed to topple the Assad regime after years of conflict. A regime is a way to describe a government, but it's in a bad way. If you call a government a regime, that means you don't really like that government. You disagree with that government. But in everyday English, topple could also mean to fall. In the picture, it looks like there are some wooden blocks. At one time, they were standing up. Now they have been toppled or they are leaning over. Leaning over, to use an English phrasal verb. The next one is coalition. Coalition, that is a group formed for a common purpose, often of different organizations or countries. Sometimes, if the United States wants to go to war with a country, they will form a coalition. That means other countries that are their friends who will fight with them. Let's look at an example sentence that has something to do with Syria. A coalition of rebel groups worked together to capture Damascus. But be careful. Just because one rebel group is now in power, or it looks like they are in power, there are about a dozen different rebel groups in Syria. Unfortunately, the fighting in Syria might not be over. Some of those rebel groups are supported by Turkey, by Iran, by the United States, by Russia. Some rebel groups have even worked with Israel. So it is a very complicated situation still in Syria. Let's talk about the rebel group that has control in Damascus right now. I'm going to do my best to pronounce this Arabic word or this Arabic name in English. Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. But they are an Islamic rebel group in Syria. HTS, it's a lot easier to say for people who speak English. HTS played a significant or a big role in the offensive against Damascus.
Celebrations in Damascus as crowds topple a statue after a coalition of Islamist rebel groups called HTS sweep across Syria, taking control of the troubled country. The dramatic collapse marks a major shift in the Middle East, ending the Assad family's decades-long iron-fisted rule over Syria and possible radical change for the country.
So the Assad government had a dramatic collapse. What does that term mean in English? A sudden and complete failure. The government's dramatic collapse led to celebrations in the streets. Let's talk about the Assad family for a minute. They were the ruling family of Syria, led by Bashar al-Assad. The Assad family's rule over Syria has ended after the recent events. The Assad family had ruled Syria for 54 years. Bashar al-Assad's father, Hafez al-Assad, came to power in 1970.
The dramatic collapse marks a major shift in the Middle East, ending the Assad family's decades-long iron-fisted rule over Syria and possible radical change for the country.
What this may do is to herald a new situation in which there is an area in which a unified government is able to control Syria.
President Bashar al-Assad, who's been in control for 24 years, has reportedly fled the country. Syria's prime minister says he's ready to hand over the government to the opposition in a peaceful transition.
In the newscast, they talked about iron-fisted rule. What does that mean? A strict and harsh way of governing. The Assad family's iron-fisted rule lasted for decades. And remember, a decade is 10 years, so it lasted for over 5 decades. Iron-fisted rule is an idiom. Nobody actually has an iron fist like you see here in the picture, but maybe that picture will help you remember what iron-fisted means. Strict and harsh. Lots of penalties for doing the wrong thing. In the newscast, they mention heralded. Heralded is a verb meaning to signal or announce something. The fall of Damascus heralded a new era for Syria.
The dramatic collapse marks a major shift in the Middle East, ending the Assad family's decades-long iron-fisted rule over Syria and possible radical change for the country.
What this may do is to herald a new situation in which there is an area in which a unified government is able to control Syria.
President Bashar al-Assad, who's been in control for 24 years, has reportedly fled the country. Syria's prime minister says he's ready to hand over the government to the opposition in a peaceful transition.
Unified is the next difficult word they use in the newscast. That means joined together as a single unit. The unified rebel forces succeeded in capturing the capital. So remember, some of the rebel forces have unified, but some have not. I am going to apologize in advance because I will probably pronounce the Prime Minister of Syria's name wrong, but here I go. Mohammed Ghazahi al-Jahali. I'm sorry about that, but the important part is the president of Syria has fled. He has left, but the prime minister has stayed, and he says he wants to work with the rebels to have a transition of power. We'll talk about what that means, but he wants what's best for the Syrian people. He wants this new government to have an easy time taking over the country. And there is a picture of the Syrian prime minister. He is the head of the government right now in Syria. Syria's prime minister announced plans for a transition of power. A peaceful transition of power is crucial or very important for Syria's future stability. Stability, or being stable, is the opposite of chaos. I talked about that in the English lesson about martial law in South Korea. In January, the United States will have a transition of power when we go from President Joe Biden to President-elect Donald Trump. And once President-elect Donald Trump becomes president, he will no longer be called President-elect Trump.
Syria's prime minister says he's ready to hand over the government to the opposition in a peaceful transition. The White House says President Joe Biden is closely monitoring the situation, and President-elect Donald Trump posting on social media, quote, "The United States should have nothing to do with it. This is not our fight."
Monitoring. That means watching or checking on a situation carefully. International organizations are monitoring the situation in Israel closely. In the newscast, they talk about President Biden monitoring the situation in Syria closely. And they also mention how our president-elect, Donald Trump, wants nothing to do with the situation in Syria. That means he does not want to be involved. Trump stated he wants nothing to do with the conflict in Syria. And that's one thing that might change once President Trump becomes our new president. He might not want to send aid or help or money to places like Ukraine or Syria. He may want to focus more on the American people, giving the homeless, for instance, in the United States, more help or more aid.
Government apparently has fallen after a sudden rebel offensive sprinted into the capital of Damascus. And tonight there are reports that Syrian President Bashar al-Assad has fled the country. The move brings a stunning end to the 50-year rule of the Assad family.
Eyewitness News reporter Leanne Suter joins us live from our newsroom with the latest on this breaking news. Leanne?
Hey, Michelle, the rapidly changing events shaking the region, several countries shutting down their borders with Syria as the rebels take control of the country. Celebrations in Damascus as crowds topple a statue after a coalition of Islamist rebel groups called HTS sweep across Syria, taking control of the troubled country. The dramatic collapse marks a major shift in the Middle East, ending the Assad family's decades-long iron-fisted rule over Syria and possible radical change for the country.
What this may do is to herald a new situation in which there is an area in which a unified government is able to control Syria.
President Bashar al-Assad, who's been in control for 24 years, has reportedly fled the country. Syria's prime minister says he's ready to hand over the government to the opposition in a peaceful transition. The White House says President Joe Biden is closely monitoring the situation, and President-elect Donald Trump posting on social media, quote, "The United States should have nothing to do with it. This is not our fight." Syrians celebrating across the country, many chanting freedom. Experts say the opposition knew exactly when to strike.
And it understood very well what was going on in terms of the inability of the international community to intervene in Syria as it had in the past.
Opposition. When you hear that, think opposite. Groups or individuals who are against the current government. The difference between opposition and rebels are that rebels will fight. Opposition, they might not fight with like guns. They might fight more with words. The opposition forces have taken control of major cities in Syria. They talk about chanting in the newscast. Do you know what chanting is? You might hear it at a soccer game. Chanting means shouting or singing the same words repeatedly or over and over again. People were chanting slogans in support of the rebels.
Syrians celebrating across the country, many chanting freedom. Experts say the opposition knew exactly when to strike.
And it understood very well what was going on in terms of the inability of the international community to intervene in Syria.
Intervene means to get involved in a situation to change the outcome. The United States is intervening almost everywhere in the world, right? They can't help sticking their noses into other people's business. Have you heard that idiom? It's negative, but it means intervening. Congratulations, you have made it to the end of another English lesson. If you're looking for bonus English lessons, I do have a membership group. There is a link in the description if you want an extra English lesson each week. I just released an English lesson where I talk about treating my driveway that was really icy with something we call rock salt. Since the beginning of the Syrian civil war back in 2011, over 300,000 Syrians have died. Many more are lost and no one knows where they are. In today's English lesson, we are going to watch a newscast from CNN. At the very beginning, they are going to talk about what is happening now. Israel is bombing parts of Syria. Turkey, or Turkiya, is bombing parts of Syria. Even the US is bombing parts of Syria. But before we talk about Syria's future, let's remember its past. You will meet a Syrian woman whose husband was taken from her. He was placed in a detention center and he would die there. Her father was also taken too. In today's English lesson, you will learn terms like brutal, coupled with buffer zone, the English phrasal verb wipe out, and rose up. You will learn what a tyrant is, and you will learn a word that I have difficulty pronouncing, unfathomable. I usually just say you can't fathom it, and so many more. My heart is with the Syrian people. I hope that they have a bright future. I know the odds are stacked against them. That is an idiom we sometimes use when we say it is going to be tough. Let's take a look at a clip from the newscast, and then I will come back and teach the most difficult vocabulary.
From Western Syria now, as its naval fleet was completely destroyed by Israeli strikes. That's according to Israel, as part of Israel's punishing response following the collapse of brutal Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad's regime. Israel says that the airstrikes, coupled with the decision to move past a buffer zone into Syria, are all part of Israel's effort to wipe out the threats to Israel from Syria.
Naval fleet. Naval fleet. Now, naval is the adjective form of navy. For each of these terms, I will have a picture, I will have the official definition, and I will use that term in a sentence. A naval fleet is a group of ships that belong to the Navy. The naval fleet protected the coastline during the war. Unfortunately, it looks like Syria will not have much of a naval fleet left because countries like Israel and the US are bombing them. I understand. They say it in the newscast. Those countries are worried that those weapons could get into the hands of the wrong people. It's just sad to hear that the Syrian people have suffered so much and they are continuing to suffer. But hopefully bright days are ahead. You heard brutal in the newscast. Let's talk about what that is. Very violent or cruel. The soldiers faced brutal conditions during the long battle.
From Western Syria now, as its naval fleet was completely destroyed by Israeli strikes. That's according to Israel, as part of Israel's punishing response following the collapse of brutal Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad's regime. Israel says that the airstrikes, coupled with the decision to move past a buffer zone into Syria, are all part of Israel's effort to wipe out the threats to Israel from Syria.
Coupled with is a good term to know in English. You may know couple. It's two people. Sometimes they are in love, but you could have a couple birds hanging out on a power line. That happens in my neighborhood sometimes. We call those birds mourning doves. But coupled with means combined with something else. The lack of food coupled with the cold weather made life very hard. I did ask AI to create a picture for that sentence. The lack of food coupled with the cold weather made life very hard. You can see it is very cold. People are living in tents. They only have one fire in the middle to keep everyone warm. Those conditions look brutal. In the newscast, they mentioned that Israel is trying to create a buffer zone with Syria. Let's talk about what buffer zone means. Buffer zone is an area created to keep two opposing sides apart. If two sides are opposing, they are fighting each other. The buffer zone was set up between the two armies to prevent more fighting. In the very middle of that picture, you can see there is a buffer zone. Again, I asked AI to create this image, and I think they did a pretty good job. I hope by looking at this picture, you now have a better understanding of what buffer zone is.
From western Syria now, as its naval fleet was completely destroyed by Israeli strikes. That's according to Israel, as part of Israel's punishing response following the collapse of brutal Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad's regime. Israel says that the airstrikes, coupled with the decision to move past a buffer zone into Syria, are all part of Israel's effort to wipe out the threats to Israel from Syria.
You know, native English speakers love to use English phrasal verbs. And what makes these so difficult is you may know the definition for the word wipe, but that has nothing to do with the English phrasal verb wipe out. Let's talk about what wipeout means: to completely destroy something. The bombing wiped out several buildings in the town. And you can see in the picture, those buildings, even those cars in front, have been wiped out. Nobody will be able to live in those buildings. They have been wiped out.
A buffer zone into Syria are all part of Israel's effort to wipe out the threats to Israel from Syria. CNN's Jemana Karacha is in a Damascus suburb where Syrians are taking in a moment of massive change, hoping it is for the best. She spoke to one Syrian who lost nearly everything during Assad's brutal reign.
Rain is the next one. Notice how it's spelt. It's not like the wet stuff that falls from the sky. Reign means the period when a leader or ruler is in control. The Assad's reign lasted for over 50 years before they were removed from power. And you can see that man. It looks like he likes power, and he is crushing a balloon that looks like the globe. It looks like the earth.
CNN's Jemana Karacha is in a Damascus suburb where Syrians are taking in a moment of massive change, hoping it is for the best. She spoke to one Syrian who lost nearly everything during Assad's brutal reign.
What's left of Dereya tells of the horrors that unfolded here. Every corner scarred by a ruthless regime's fight for survival.
The man in this picture looks pretty ruthless. Let's talk about what ruthless is. Ruthless means not caring about hurting others to get what you want. The ruthless leader showed no mercy to his enemies. And I think it would be easy to describe Assad as ruthless. He even bombed his own citizens.
What's left of Dereya tells of the horrors that unfolded here. Every corner scarred by a ruthless regime's fight for survival. This Damascus suburb rose up peacefully, demanding freedom. More than a decade on, a shattered Dareya and its people are finally free.
In the picture is a map of Syria, and the biggest city on that map is Dareya. Let's talk about that city. It's a town in Syria known for its resistance during the Syrian civil war. If you resist something, you fight against it. Dareya became famous for standing up against oppression. If somebody is oppressing you, they are trying to keep you down. Standing up means you don't take it. You fight back. You resist it. I have a picture of a rose. That flower in English is called a rose, but we also have an English phrasal verb, rose up, and it has nothing to do with that flower. Rose up means to fight against a leader or government. The people rose up against the dictator. If you don't know what a dictator is in English, it's when one person controls everything in a country. I think it's pretty safe to say that the country of North Korea has a dictator right now. If you are learning English from this English lesson, do you mind doing me a favor? Hit that like button. It helps other people find the English lesson. And if this is your first time here, don't be afraid to subscribe so you never miss another English lesson.
What's left of Dareya tells of the horrors that unfolded here. Every corner scarred by a ruthless regime's fight for survival. This Damascus suburb rose up peacefully, demanding freedom. More than a decade on, a shattered Dareya and its people are finally free. This was for our children, Firas tells me. It's so they don't have to live under the tyrant's rule. Her story of loss and pain so unfathomable for us, yet so common in this place, that for years endured some of the most brutal tactics of the Assad regime, besieged, starved, and bombed into surrender.
Tyrant is the next one. This is a noun, this is a person, and it is a cruel and unfair leader. The tyrant made people live in fear during his rule. All right, there are just some words in English that I have trouble saying. There might be words in your own language that you have trouble saying. This is one of them for me. I will try it a couple times. Unfathomable. It's that last part that really gives me trouble. Unfathomable. To be honest, I just say you can't fathom it. It's the same thing. It means impossible to understand because it is so extreme. I can't fathom the amount of abuse the Syrian people have had to endure for over the last decade. Truly sad stuff. The destruction of the city was unfathomable to those who survived. Again, if you have trouble saying that word, just do what I do and say you can't fathom it.
This was for our children, Firas tells me. It's so they don't have to live under the tyrant's rule. Her story of loss and pain so unfathomable for us, yet so common in this place, that for years endured some of the most brutal tactics of the Assad regime, besieged, starved, and bombed into surrender.
Firas says they came out asking for freedom, and they were met with bullets and tanks. She says, we're not terrorists, and they did this. And imagine, she says, there were women and children living in these homes.
So many men like her husband Mazen detained and disappeared. 2 years later, a released prisoner told her he saw him in jail. They beat him so much his wounded leg was infected. He was in so much pain, she says. There was no medical care in prison, and because of all he was going through, he lost his mind.
Besieged. Besieged is the next word, and that means surrounded by enemies so no one can leave or get help. The town was besieged for months, and the people ran out of food. Detained is the next one. It's almost like arrested. Arrested is more official. Detained means kept somewhere and not allowed to leave. The police detained him for questioning about the protests.
Firas says they came out asking for freedom, and they were met with bullets and tanks. She says, we're not terrorists, and they did this. And imagine, she says, there were women and children living in these homes.
So many men like her husband Mazen detained and disappeared. 2 years later, a released prisoner told her he saw him in jail. They beat him so much his wounded leg was infected. He was in so much pain, she says. There was no medical care in prison, and because of all he was going through, he lost his mind.
In the newscast, they mention a detention center. A detention center is almost like a prison, but again, a prison is more official. A detention center is where people could be detained. Let's look at a sentence using both terms. People might be detained in a detention center. Lost his mind is an English idiom. Let's talk about what it actually means. To become very upset or mentally unstable. After the attack, he thought he had lost his mind because of the stress.
So many men like her husband Mazen detained and disappeared. 2 years later, a released prisoner told her he saw him in jail. They beat him so much his wounded leg was infected. He was in so much pain, she says. There was no medical care in prison, and because of all he was going through, he lost his mind. The prisoner last saw him taken away crying and screaming hysterically. She went from one detention center to the next searching for him until they broke the news to her in the most cruel of ways. They handed her his belongings and told her to register his death. There are no words to describe how I was feeling when I left, she says. I was holding on to the hope he would be released and our family would be reunited.
Belongings. Belongings. Those are the things someone owns. After the war, they packed their belongings and left the city. It's just another way to say the things you own. In that picture, I'm not sure if that is Syria. It doesn't look like a war has happened around that house, but it does look like somebody is moving and they are packing up all of their belongings. From an English lesson that has so many sad things, this one is actually super happy. Unfortunately, it could not happen for the woman being interviewed. She was never reunited with her husband. But let's talk about what reunited means in English. Brought together again after being apart. Anytime you see re or re at the beginning of a word, it probably means again. The family was reunited after years of separation. Being separated, not being together.
There was no medical care in prison, and because of all he was going through, he lost his mind. The prisoner last saw him taken away crying and screaming hysterically. She went from one detention center to the next searching for him until they broke the news to her in the most cruel of ways. They handed her his belongings and told her to register his death. There are no words to describe how I was feeling when I left, she says. I was holding on to the hope he would be released and our family would be reunited. They didn't even give me his body. This is the last photo she has of Mazen and his youngest boy. Raif doesn't remember his dad. Noor was 6 and so attached to his father. Every day he would wait by the door for him to come back. When I would hear someone calling Baba, Dad, it was torment for me, Firas says. What did these children do to be deprived of their father? She has to be strong for her boys, she says. She is all they have. Her father also disappeared into the black holes of Assad's jails. Like her husband, their only crime, she says, was being from Daraya.
She says, I'm just one of thousands and thousands of stories, and that's just in Daraya. And just imagine how many more there are across Syria.
With the end of this dark chapter in their history, a new life, a new Syria emerges. from the rubble of their broken lives.
Torment. It means great pain or suffering, either physical, so with the body, or emotional, or even mental, having something to do with the mind. The memories of the war were a constant torment to him. Black holes. Now in English, we sometimes use black holes for things in the sky that just suck in everything, light, planets, gravity, all of that stuff. But in the newscast, they use it differently. Empty spaces where something has been destroyed or removed. The bombs left black holes in the ground where buildings once stood. Rubble. Pieces of stone, brick, or concrete from a destroyed building. After the bombing, the streets were filled with rubble. In the picture, it looks like that machine we call a backhoe is trying to remove rubble from the streets. Watching the news in English is a great way to improve your English. Unfortunately, people on the news will use some very difficult vocabulary. They'll use those English idioms, and of course, they will use those English phrasal verbs. But I have good news. You can watch a news report with a real English teacher, me. And this story is crazy. There are drones flying over parts of the United States, and nobody knows who is doing it. Is it the Russians? Is it the Chinese? Hopefully one day we will find out, but as of today, we don't know. Let's take a look at the news clip, and then I will come back and teach some English.
The reported drone sightings that have consumed New Jersey.
There's a drone!
Now expanding to Bowie, Maryland, outside of Washington, where a group of 4 senators from New York and New Jersey are demanding a briefing from the FBI, FAA, and Homeland Security as soon as possible on how the agencies are working to identify and address the source of these incursions.
In the news report, they said the word consumed. Let's talk about what that means. When something takes up all of someone's time or focus. The mysterious drones have consumed everyone's attention in New Jersey. Maybe we should talk about the state of New Jersey, talk about where these drones have been seen. And if you look at that little red spot on the map, that is the state of New Jersey. It's very close to New York City. I have a sentence that uses consumed. Teenagers can be consumed by their phones. I must admit, sometimes my phone can be quite consuming. I am often consumed by my phone. Hopefully you are consumed by learning English. You might also hear the term time consuming. It's another way to say it takes a lot of time to do something. Learning English can be very time consuming. Expanding. What does that mean? Getting bigger or spreading out. The area where the drones are flying is expanding every night. The drones were first sighted in New Jersey. Now they have been sighted in the next state over that we call Maryland. Take a look at this picture. This man has just finished dinner and it looks like his stomach is expanding or his stomach is getting bigger. I am filming this English lesson in December. That is holiday time here in the United States. I need to be careful that I don't eat too much food. I don't need my stomach to be expanding either. After the big dinner, he felt his stomach expanding.
The reported drone sightings that have consumed New Jersey.
There's a drone!
Now expanding to Bowie, Maryland, outside of Washington, where a group of 4 senators from New York and New Jersey are demanding a briefing from the FBI, FAA, and Homeland Security as soon as possible on how the agencies are working to identify and address the source of these incursions.
We don't know who is sending them, who's controlling them, whether they are spying.
I've been a little frustrated. There hasn't been enough transparency.
A briefing. Let's talk about what a briefing is. It's a short meeting to give information. The police held a briefing to explain what they know about the drones. That is just an example. I don't think the police know too much about the drones. The White House gave a briefing about these drones, and it doesn't seem like they know too much about them either. They did say that they know it is not a foreign threat. When you hear that foreign, it means like another country. So they are telling us that these drones are not from Russia. They're not from China. Could they be the American military? Maybe the American military is flying these drones over New Jersey and Maryland.
The reported drone sightings that have consumed New Jersey.
It's a drone!
Now expanding to Bowie, Maryland, outside of Washington, where a group of 4 senators from New York and New Jersey are demanding a briefing from the FBI, FAA, and Homeland Security as soon as possible on how the agencies are working to identify and address the source of these incursions.
They also mentioned incursions. We often use that with war. So let's talk about what incursions are. It's when something enters a place where it does not belong. You can see in the picture there are some soldiers, and it looks like there is an incursion in that town. Those soldiers maybe are from a foreign country and they are invading that city. Here is an example sentence that uses incursions. The mayor called the drones flying over private property incursions.
We don't know who is sending them, who's controlling them, whether they are spying.
I've been a little frustrated. There hasn't been enough transparency, letting people know what's happening. It's allowing a lot of potentially misinformation to spread, or at least fear.
At Rose's Luncheonette in Kenville, New Jersey, the drones are the talk of the town.
There's a lot of panic in the area.
The restaurant's owner says he was actually woken up by one.
It sounded like a helicopter. You looked out the window and you saw lights, in the sky, like a green light, red light.
There's a pair of drones right here in front of me.
Frustrated. I'm sure learning English can be very frustrating. Let's talk about what frustrated means. Feeling upset because you cannot solve a problem. People are frustrated because they don't know where the drones are coming from. Training a dog can be very frustrating. It looks like the woman in the picture is frustrated with her dog. Transparency. It means being open and honest, sharing all the information. I'm not sure the White House is being completely transparent. It seems like they know more than they are sharing with the public. The government promised transparency about the drone investigation. I don't know how it is in your country, but the government isn't always transparent with the American people. I think they hide a lot of secrets. I would like to very quickly remind you to like this English lesson if you are learning English, and if you don't mind, subscribe to the channel if this is your first time here. Also, a quick word from Cab Health. I just need to interrupt this English lesson for a second to tell you about Cab Health. Over the summer, about 4 months ago, they gave me a hair transplant and I could not be more happy. If you or someone you know is thinking about a hair transplant and you don't know where to turn, trust the good folks at Cab Health. Mention my name for 10% off. For more information, check the description below.
We don't know who is sending them, who's controlling them, whether they are spying.
I've been a little frustrated. There hasn't been enough transparency, letting people know what's happening. It's allowing a lot of potentially misinformation to spread, or at least fear.
At Rose's Luncheonette in Kenville, New Jersey, the drones are the talk of the town.
There's a lot of panic in the area.
The restaurant's owner says he was actually woken up by one.
It sounded like a helicopter. You looked out the window and you saw lights, in the sky, like a green light, red light.
There's a pair of drones right here in front of me.
About a week ago, Mayor Sam Morris in nearby Mine Hill Township investigated reports of 8 drones flying by his government building.
He saw them right over there, right over this tree line.
He says local mayors are demanding answers, too.
Talk of the town. Talk of the town. It's kind of like an idiom or a saying that we have which means something everyone is talking about. The mysterious drones have become the talk of the town. And in the picture, we have a diner or a restaurant. And who knows, maybe everyone in that restaurant is talking about those drones. Do you know what a mayor is? Mayor. That might be kind of difficult to pronounce. Mayor. It's the leader of a town or city government. The mayor asked for more police officers to investigate the drones. So yeah, we have a president. That person is the leader of the country. We have governors. They are leaders of states, and mayors, well, they lead cities.
At Rose's Luncheonette in Kenville, New Jersey, the drones are the talk of the town.
There's a lot of panic in the area.
The restaurant's owner says he was actually woken up by one.
It sounded like a helicopter. Looked out the window and you saw lights, you know, in the sky, like a green light, red light.
There's a pair of drones right here in front of me.
About a week ago, Mayor Sam Morris in nearby Mine Hill Township investigated reports of 8 drones flying by his government building.
He saw them right over there, right over this tree line.
He says local mayors are demanding answers, too.
If this smacks of a lack of control.
In the news report, a man says, "This smacks of." What does that mean? I thought that might be new for a lot of people who are learning English. This seems like, or gives the feeling of, something bad. This smacks of a bigger problem that we don't understand yet.
Local mayors are demanding answers, too.
If this smacks of a lack of control, and that makes people very uncomfortable.
Thursday, the White House downplaying concerns, saying the sightings are not military drones and do not come from a foreign threat. They aren't even sure if they're drones at all.
It appears that many of the reported sightings are actually manned aircraft that are being operated lawfully.
Rob D'Amico is the former head of the FBI's counter-drone unit, who says it can be easy to confuse drones with planes or other aircraft.
So you suspect that a large percentage of these sightings are actually manned aircraft?
I believe probably 90% of them are. And I think the other 10% are drones that are allowed to be flying.
Whatever's swooping around in the skies, locals believe they're not getting the full story.
Do you get the impression the federal government knows way more than what they were?
Absolutely. Without a doubt.
I actually think a lot of people agree with him, because if it was a real threat, you would imagine the federal government would have said, Houston, we got a problem.
They also mentioned downplaying, like maybe the federal government in Washington is downplaying the threat of these drones. Like, I bet they know what these drones are, they just don't want to tell us. But when you downplay something, that means you make something seem less important than it really is. Some officials are downplaying the drone sightings, saying that they are not a threat. We have swooping next. Swooping is a verb meaning moving quickly down and then up like a bird. People saw the drones swooping over their houses last night. This has actually happened to me at the beach. I was eating a hot dog and then a bird swooped down and grabbed it right out of my hand. Houston, we have a problem. That is from a famous movie here in the United States called Apollo 13. It stars Tom Hanks.
Say again, please. Houston, we have a problem.
But it's another way to say there is a big problem. When the drones started flying near the airport, people said, "Houston, we have a problem."
I actually think a lot of people agree with him, because if it was a real threat, you would imagine the federal government would have said, Houston, we got a problem.
Are they manned flights? Are they inaccurate sightings? What was really interesting was to hear from the White House yesterday when they said they don't actually have their own imagery. They're largely going off of the imagery that's being provided by people that are reporting this. So they're combing through that as well. But to your question about if it were a real threat, speaking with the former head of the counter-drone unit for the FBI, he would know what he's talking about. If Russia or China were behind this, he said they wouldn't come in with lights on, huge amounts of sound, and be hovering over people's neighborhoods. So it's pretty apparent that they don't see a national security risk profile here. But what is it is the question that remains.
Oh, and the fact that all of these lawmakers who are veterans are not, you know, in the know, they don't know what it is kind of surprising too, I think.
There's just so much about it that doesn't smell right.
Yeah.
It just doesn't, like, someone knows what those
And whoever it
germs
is,
are.
can you say, oh, sorry guys, that was me? Like, can you?
Just tell us what you got, right? But the fact that we're talking about this for several minutes indicates that people just really want answers.
A good phrasal verb here, to figure out something. To figure out, that means to find the answer or understand something. People are trying to figure out what these drones are. The police are trying to figure out who is flying the drones. Welcome back to another English lesson. In today's English lesson, you will learn about 25 new terms you can use if you are studying for the IELTS or TOEFL exam, or maybe you just want to have more advanced conversations in English. If this is your first time here, my name is Brent, and I have been an English teacher in the United States for over 20 years. In today's English lesson, we are going to take a look at a very strange news story about a young guy, or at least he is young to me. He is 24 years old, and he has the most Italian name I have ever heard. Luigi Mangione, and he did a horrible thing to a CEO of a powerful insurance company. We will talk about what a CEO is, we'll talk about insurance, and we'll talk about some fairly legal terms here in English, like waive extradition, indictment, executing warrant. We'll talk about two ways we use execute in English. One way we use tip in English. We use it in a bunch of different ways. Appropriately prioritized. Some pretty big words there, but don't worry. By the end of this lesson, you will be able to use them in a conversation. Initially thought, and a couple of my favorite words to say in English: unconscionable, vitriol, and so many more. Let's take a look at the news story, and then I will come back and teach those difficult words.
Details on the killing of UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson. Police now say the suspect didn't take a bus. He took the train to Pennsylvania. And now, with a new high-powered attorney, he may waive extradition and be in New York by Tuesday. ABC's Ike Kajachi joins us now with the latest here. Good morning, Ike.
Good morning, Gio. Sources tell ABC News prosecutors are working on an indictment, executing search warrants, and presenting evidence to a grand jury. And now, the FBI is saying it received a tip about the identity of the suspect from police in San Francisco 4 days after the shooting.
Before we get too far into the English lesson, can I ask you to hit that like button? It helps other English learners find the channel. And if you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and subscribe so you never miss another English lesson. In the newscast, they talk about UnitedHealthcare. Let's talk about what that is. For each of these difficult terms, I will have a picture, I will have the official definition, and I will use it in a sentence. UnitedHealthcare is a big company that helps people pay for doctors and hospitals. Or at least that is what they are supposed to do. You pay a little bit of money each month to this insurance company. When you have a problem with your health, you will file an insurance claim and they should pay that bill for you. But sometimes you get denied. That means they won't help you, even though you have been paying them each month. Many people in America, or I like to say the United States, use UnitedHealthcare for health insurance. CEO, that is an acronym. The C stands for a word, the E stands for a word. Let's talk about the definition. Chief Executive Officer. That is a little hard to say, so we just say CEO. That is the boss of a company who makes the big decisions. Let's use it in a sentence. The CEO of the company talked about their plan for next year.
Details on the killing of UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson. Police now say the suspect didn't take a bus. He took the train to Pennsylvania. And now, with a new high-powered attorney, he may waive extradition and be in New York by Tuesday.
Luigi Mangione got a high-powered attorney. What does that mean? A lawyer who is very successful and important. The man hired a high-powered attorney to help him in court. And yes, Mangione's family has a lot of money, so I think they can afford this high-powered attorney. This one can be a little tricky because it has a lot to do with the law. Let's take a look at the definition first. To waive extradition means to agree to go back to another state or country for a trial. Now, Mangione committed the crime in the state of New York. He then fled to Pennsylvania. Those are two different states in the United States. Yeah, I know it's all one country, but each state has their own laws. So for the police in Pennsylvania to take the suspect to New York, they need to get the courts involved. Luigi Mangione could make it difficult to get him from one state to the other if he wanted to. We will talk about that a little later. But if he waives extradition, he basically says, yeah, it's okay. You can take me to New York. The man decided to waive extradition and go back to face the charges. We will talk about later what would happen if he contests it.
Details on the killing of UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson. Police now say the suspect didn't take a bus. He took the train to Pennsylvania. And now, with a new high-powered attorney, he may waive extradition and be in New York by Tuesday. ABC's Ike Kajachi joins us now with the latest here. Good morning, Ike.
Good morning, Gio. Sources tell ABC News prosecutors are working on an indictment, executing search warrants, and presenting evidence to a grand jury. And now, the FBI is saying it received a tip about the identity of the suspect from police in San Francisco 4 days after the shooting. NYPD confirming that message wasn't appropriately prioritized.
The next difficult term they talk about in the newscast is indictment. Let's talk about what an indictment is. It's a paper that says someone is officially charged with a crime. The court gave the man an indictment for stealing. Here we have the first of 2 times we will use the word execute or executing. Executing warrants means police acting on a paper that lets them arrest and search someone. Or search someone. The police can get a warrant through the courts. They have to go see a judge. The police cannot just enter somebody's house without a warrant, but if they think something bad is going on inside the house, they can go see a judge. The judge can say, yeah, it's fine. Here is a piece of paper that lets you search the house. The same goes for vehicles or cars or trucks. The police need a search warrant to search those vehicles. Let's use it in a sentence. The police were executing warrants to search the house. Okay, tip has, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 different ways we use it in English. Let's talk about the way they use it in the newscast. A small piece of information someone gives to help. The police got a tip about where the suspect was hiding. And in that picture, it looks like the police officer could be receiving a tip on the phone. Somebody is calling in to help the officer find the suspect, or maybe solve the crime.
Sources tell ABC News prosecutors are working on an indictment, executing search warrants, and presenting evidence to a grand jury. And now, the FBI is saying it received a tip about the identity of the suspect from police in San Francisco 4 days after the shooting. NYPD confirming that message wasn't appropriately prioritized.
Appropriately prioritized. Appropriately prioritized. Now that is some advanced English, but don't worry. In just a few minutes, you will know how to use it. It means putting things in the right order of importance. Now, hopefully you have prioritized your English learning. That is one of the most important things in your life. Maybe your family comes first. That's your first priority. And then maybe work. And then who knows? Maybe it's English learning. The teacher appropriately prioritized the student's work for the day. Let's talk about the opposite. What if you inappropriately prioritized your life? Well, if doing drugs or drinking alcohol was your number one priority, well, that would probably be inappropriate, the opposite of appropriate. Appropriate is what is right.
And now, the FBI is saying it received a tip about the identity of the suspect from police in San Francisco 4 days after the shooting. NYPD confirming that message wasn't appropriately prioritized. This morning, investigators are learning more about accused killer Luigi Mangione, facing charges with murdering UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson in New York City. Sources telling ABC News the 26-year-old allegedly shot and killed Thompson after fixating on him for months.
Allegedly. We have talked about this before on this channel. It is often used when legal things are talked about because Luigi Mangione hasn't been convicted of a crime, like he hasn't gone to court, a judge and a jury has not said that he committed this crime. Everything he did is alleged. Let's talk about what allegedly means. People say it happened, but it hasn't been proven yet. It's a good way for news reporters to not get sued. He allegedly stole the money, but the court hasn't decided yet. Love this word, fixating. Fixating. It means thinking too much about one thing. I hope you are fixated on learning English. That would be very healthy. But it seems like Luigi Mangione was fixated on this CEO, Brian Thompson. It's not good when you are fixated on a person. Let's look at a sentence. She kept fixating on the mistake she made in her homework. That isn't healthy either. Christmas time is coming up in the United States for many Americans, and it looks like this girl might be fixated on those Christmas lights.
This morning, investigators are learning more about accused killer Luigi Mangione, facing charges with murdering UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson in New York City. Sources telling ABC News the 26-year-old allegedly shot and killed Thompson after fixating on him for months. Investigators say they recovered a spiral notebook after arresting him.
In the picture, we have a spiral staircase. Let's talk about what spiral is. A shape that goes around and around. She wrote her notes down in a spiral notebook. Right there is what we call a spiral notebook. Take a look at that arrow. It is pointing to the spiral part. I don't want to spend too much time on this word, but this is the second time we've seen execute, and it means something very different here. It means to kill someone on purpose. The criminal executed his victim in a terrible way. Okay, let's move on from this one.
Investigators say they recovered a spiral notebook after arresting him. That notebook allegedly showing a growing hatred toward UnitedHealthcare and its chief executive, resulting in the execution-style murder. Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg says Mangione may be in New York City as early as Tuesday to face charges.
Indications are that the defendant may waive. Will be ready whether he is going to waive extradition or whether he's going to contest extradition.
When you first look at that word, you might look at it and see contest, and you would be correct. But remember, English likes to make things difficult, so we also have this word contest, and it is spelled the same way. Let's talk about what contest means. It means to argue or fight about something. He decided to contest the charges in court. In the newscast, they talk about contesting extradition. Earlier, we talked about waiving extradition. That just means you are telling the police, okay, You can take me to a different state. It could be a different country. But what if Luigi Mangione contests extradition? He will still go to New York to face charges. It just might take a little more time. So if it is uncontested, it could happen pretty quickly, within 1 to 4 weeks. In the newscast, they said that they thought he would be in New York pretty soon. Contested extradition with no appeals, 4 to 8 weeks. Attorneys and their clients can appeal things. That means the judge rules one way and the attorney says, no, I don't think so. Let's try that again. So if they decide to appeal the ruling, they might have to go back into court. That would take a little more time, but eventually it will happen. We will talk about eventually in just a minute, but contested extradition with appeals might take up to 3 to 6 months. Or like they said, maybe longer in rare cases, but it will happen. He will eventually go to New York to face charges.
Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg says Mangione may be in New York City as early as Tuesday to face charges.
Indications are that the defendant may waive. Will be ready whether he is going to waive extradition or whether he's going to contest extradition.
This, as we're learning more about Mangione's alleged movements the morning after the shooting, pictured here in this taxi, according to authorities. Police say there's video evidence showing the suspect leaving Manhattan by train, not by bus, as initially thought.
Initially thought. What someone believes at first. Initial means like first, or it can. We have a couple different ways to use initial. I initially thought it would rain today, but the sun is out. This word might be review eventually. I hope you know this already, but if you don't, you should know it because native English speakers use it all the time. Eventually, it means after some time. Like it will happen. It just hasn't happened yet. He worked hard and eventually finished the project. Eventually, you will become great at English as long as you keep working hard.
This, as we're learning more about Mangione's alleged movements the morning after the shooting, pictured here in this taxi, according to authorities. Police say there's video evidence showing the suspect leaving Manhattan by train, not by bus, as initially thought. Pennsylvania authorities say Mangione then spent several days traveling the state, eventually making his way to Pittsburgh, shortly before getting caught at this McDonald's in Altoona, Pennsylvania. UnitedHealthcare telling ABC News that neither Mangione or his parents were UnitedHealthcare members. Now, police say they're investigating if he allegedly targeted UnitedHealthcare because of its size. Insurance companies are increasingly under siege.
Under siege. Under siege. You might hear this during a war. Attacked or surrounded. The town was under siege during the war. We would call that building a castle in English, and that castle looks like it is being attacked. It is under siege.
Pennsylvania authorities say Mangione then spent several days traveling the state, eventually making his way to Pittsburgh, shortly before getting caught at this McDonald's in Altoona, Pennsylvania. UnitedHealthcare telling ABC News that neither Mangione or his parents were UnitedHealthcare members. Now, police say they're investigating if he allegedly targeted UnitedHealthcare because of its size. Insurance companies are increasingly under siege. UnitedHealthcare putting up fencing around its Minnesota headquarters. On Friday, UnitedHealth Group CEO Andrew Whitty writing an op-ed in the New York Times. We are struggling to make sense of this unconscionable act and the vitriol that has been directed at our colleagues who have been barraged by threats, and acknowledging we know the health system does not work as well as it should.
Op-ed. These used to appear only in newspapers, but now you can see them online, and it is a piece of writing in a newspaper where someone shares their opinion. That op is short for opinion. She wrote an op-ed about how to save money. Unconscionable. Unconscionable. It means very bad. and wrong. The teacher said the student's behavior was unconscionable. Unconscionable. I mean, what did they do in that classroom? It has to be pretty bad. I love saying this word. It's not a nice word, but vitriol. Vitriol. Very mean words or comments. Take a look at the man in the picture. It looks like he is spewing vitriol. The speech was full of vitriol against the politician.
Now, police say they're investigating if he allegedly targeted UnitedHealthcare because of its size. Insurance companies are increasingly under siege. UnitedHealthcare putting up fencing around its Minnesota headquarters. On Friday, UnitedHealth Group CEO Andrew Whitty writing an op-ed in the New York Times. We are struggling to make sense of this unconscionable act and the vitriol that has been directed at our colleagues who have been barraged by threats, and acknowledging we know the health system does not work as well as it should, and we understand people's frustrations with it.
Colleagues, one of our easier words, maybe this is review for you, but it's just people you work with. I talked to my colleagues about the meeting. Barrage. Barrage is another fun word to say. I bet this comes from the French. I didn't look it up. Hang on, let me look it up. And I bet it comes from the French. I asked my best friend ChatGPT, and yeah, of course, it does come from the French. So many of our words come from the French language. If you are an Italian or French or Spanish or Portuguese speaker, you will learn English more quickly, probably, than someone who speaks Chinese or Arabic or Japanese or Persian. We share a lot of our words with the Latin languages or the Romance languages. Barrage, that means a lot of things happening at once. The teacher got a barrage of questions after class. This is another word that we might use with war. It looks like, I can't even tell in that picture. Is there a town there? Is there a building? Whatever it is, it looks like it is getting a barrage of bombs. Insurance claim, we talked about this a little bit earlier, but it's asking an insurance company to pay for damage or a problem. So you pay, let's say, $150 per month to your insurance company. Hopefully you don't need that insurance, but if you get sick, have to miss work, go to the hospital, it's probably going to cost a lot of money. That's where insurance comes in. They help you pay for that. Sometimes they deny your claim, which means they will not pay for that help. He made an insurance claim after his car was damaged. We would call that auto insurance or car insurance maybe.
UnitedHealthcare has been criticized for its high rate of claim denials, particularly for its Medicare Advantage plans. The healthcare giant releasing a statement labeling the criticisms as misinformation.
Misinformation. A lot of times when you see MIS at the beginning of a word in English, it means not. Misinformation is wrong or false information. The article gave misinformation about the new rule. That's it. I think a pretty difficult, a pretty advanced English lesson there. Maybe you want to watch it a couple times. If you're looking for more English, right down there is an English lesson I did about drones flying over parts of the United States. Pretty scary stuff. Nobody knows what they are.